Alright, so now we're going to go ahead and take a look at a few techniques for isolating objects in an image. So let's go to File, Open, and open up the tabletflat.jpg. As we can see, this is simply one layer, and it has this tablet here, which is sitting on a white surface of sorts with a shadow. Okay, so this is obviously a very simple object in terms of complexity and the geometry, so cutting it out shouldn't be too much of a problem. There are some tools which will make cutting certain images or removing a background pretty easy. And so if we look at this one, if we left click and just drag out from the eraser tool, we'll see we have what's called a background eraser tool and a magic eraser tool. These are both very similar. This one here gives you the option of having a brush, and you can adjust the size of the brush, the hardness, and the spacing through these sliders right here. And what this will allow you to do is, if we turn it up to maybe around 300 and put the hardness to 0, we'll see that wherever this little crosshair is, if we alt and left click, that gives us our background. We can begin to remove the background as seen here. But you can see there's a slight issue, or rather a big issue, when you do this, because it is kind of taking the white portion of the tablet as well. And obviously this is not desirable. So if I undo that, we can see up here we have something called tolerance. So the higher the value this percentage is, the more it will take away. So if we change it to for example to 1, and we do this, we can now see that it's not taking away the white, which is actually not white for the tablet. It's a very light gray. It's now not taking that. Now the same thing applies here to the magic eraser tool. Now what's nice about the eraser tool when you're working with this type of image is you can just simply left click and it will take away everything all at once without you having to use the brush. So if we go back to 1% for the opacity, or rather if we go to tolerance to 1 and we left click, we can now see it has removed the background but has also included this shadow. So we can see the result a little bit more if we undo that, and let's try maybe 10, and you can see it got rid of a little bit more of the background with the shadow. And if we create a new layer by Control Shift and N, and we'll hit OK and move it to the bottom, and if we choose like a darker color and fill that in, we can see the result of this. It's actually not a bad result around this portion. Alright, so let's say for example, over here though, we can see slight issue with some of the white coming outside of the tablet. So when it comes to these type of scenarios where you have a background color that's very similar to the color that's in the object that you want to preserve, one of the ways that you can deal with that is by using the pen tool. Alright, so I'm going to back up by hitting Control Alt and Z a few times. And the pen tool, if you change it to make sure it is on path, what you can do if you zoom up to around 100% or even more, you can click just inside and make a real quick selection of this object. So you're left clicking and dragging just along the contour of this tablet here, and making your way down here. We'll come down here finally, left click and drag. Right around there is good. And then finally over here, left clicking. There we go. So now once you have it outlined with this pen tool, you can right click, make selection. And you have certain options here in the make selection dialog box. You have anti-alias, which is definitely what you want. And we're not going to leave a feather radius at all. What that would do is include some outside a little bit feathered for the selection. So now if we hit OK, It may invert your selection like this. It's selecting everything outside. If that's the case, just hit Control Shift and I. So now it's only selecting inside. Hit Control C to copy, and then Control V to paste. All right, so now we have basically on its own layer right here. And if we take this layer and we go to Edit and Fill, hit OK, we can now see that we have this color here, and this is completely isolated, and it's basically a perfect crop out of the tablet. And if for some reason you wanted to real quickly add a drop shadow, you can actually do that with the layer styles by double clicking the right side of the layer. You can just go to drop shadow and take the opacity 100%, change it to normal for the blend mode, take the lighting at 90 degrees, take the size up, and then the distance up as well. And now you can see we've artificially created, in a non-destructive way, that same sort of shadow, a drop shadow. All right. So that is one way of working with isolating a very simple object using the pen tool, and also experimenting here with the background eraser tool and the magic eraser tool. But let's say, for example, we have an image that we want to, or an object that's a little bit more complex. So if we go to File, Open, you can see here we'll open up animals1.jpg. So we have this dog here, which is quite fluffy and furry. And so if we had the objective of cutting this out, especially with a background that has so many different things going on, it would be quite a task, especially if you tried using the pen tool. It wouldn't be a good way of trying to isolate this dog here. So what we could do is we can use what's called, by default it's selected on the magic wand tool, but if we use what's called the quick selection tool, and up here we have some certain options. I have auto enhance turned on. You have your size for your brushes, and if you just start left clicking and holding, you'll see that the selection begins to increase as you're going along the fur of this dog. All right, so I'm just clicking out here and here, and the idea is to try to get as much of it as possible, but if it does select some of the outside over here, like the water and this portion, let's say for example we even wanted that, we could include this portion as well. All right, so once you have it selected, you can go over here to click on Refine Edges. Now this is a technique that works well generally for hair in complex images like this. So we have what's called a view mode right here, and the view mode, if you click down on it, we have a bunch of different type of options where it'll allow us to see what is a part of the current selection and what is not. So anything that's in the red is not. We could see it on a black background, on a white background, etc. Now over here we have a number of different options which will allow us to refine the control over what is being displayed here. So the radius, of course, if we decrease the radius, you'll see how it affects the image. If you increase it, you see it includes a little bit more or less of the hair. And we have also over here adjust edge. If you increase this, it really kind of creates a selection that is a little bit more inclusive of the background elements. If you have contrast, you can see that it kind of will decrease the contrast on the selection. And again, you could keep on switching back here to see what this looks like on different backgrounds. All right. And then shift edges. This will grow or not grow the edge selection that you have. So if you make it in a negative, depending on your background, having a negative shift edge can actually be ideal. All right, and if you turn on decimate colors and work with the amount, it can have some effect, but it's very subtle. All right, so if our goal was to take it from this, the original, and then you can view the original down here if you go to reveal layer, from this light background, say for instance to a very dark background, then you would work with the view here currently being black, and then hit OK. All right, so then what you could do is beneath it, Control-Shift-N for a new layer, hit OK. Fill it in with black, and then begin working on further the other areas of the image that need adjusted. So you could still use other tools, of course, when you're doing this. So if you use the background eraser tool, bring down the brush size right around there, and left click on this. Oops, we have a tolerance of 1. We can turn this up quite a bit. Now you can see when we did that, it did take away some fur. So the best result is if you take the magnifying glass and really zoom up here, and you take the background eraser tool and get rid of this. Now it will only erase where this center crosshair is selected. So if you go over here, it's not going to touch it. But if you go into here, you'll see now it's beginning to remove just the blue. And this can be a process of experimenting with this tolerance as well in order to get a desired effect. So if I hit Control-1, we're now at 100%. And let me zoom out by hitting Alt and my scroll wheel. And over here we have, it looks like some of the background is white, and again, you might want to take down the size and right around there works. And now it looks like a pretty decent cutout for the very little amount of work that we did based on the original image. All right, so that's just a few techniques for isolating background images using the background eraser tool, magic eraser tool, the quick selection here tool, and also the pen tool for isolating objects. Between those four, you basically have pretty much all you need in order to isolate any type of object in a photograph. All right. In the next lesson, we're going to go ahead and take a look at adjusting perspectives with the Perspective Warp tool here in Photoshop. All right, I'll see you then.